And we're taking a live look at what is going on now in many states in the United States of America. Live pictures from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, one of the battleground states today, and one of the states we'll be watching very closely in ongoing special coverage, that state's toss-up for a Senate seat. Midterms, usually a way for Americans to send a sharp message to Washington, to let the president know how they feel about him and how he's doing 2 years into the job as commander-in-chief. But both Democrats and Republicans are portraying the vote this year as much more than a referendum. Let's show you how it's going to break down. Looking at the House, first of all, control of Congress, ultimately much of the political agenda in Washington will be decided by the vote today. All 435 seats in the House of Representatives are up for election. And right now, Democrats go into the midterms with a tenuous hold on the House. As far as the Senate, 35 of the 100 Senate seats are up for election, 14 of them currently held by Democrats and 21 in Republican hands heading into the vote today. Seats in the Senate are split right now 50-50, and only the vote from Vice President Kamala Harris in the case of a tie gives Democrats a majority. So as we say, it is all about control of Congress and the balance of power there. Let us take you to Capitol Hill and that beautiful building. Magda Gabriselassie live with us there. And Magda has the story on the key races, really, Magda, which are going to decide whether Democrats or Republicans come away with control of Congress. And of course, because things are so tight, we know it's likely not going to be known by the end of today how this is all settled out finally. So set up this voting day for us today.
Well, Heather, there are a few battleground races that we're keeping an eye on. One of them is a Senate seat in Pennsylvania, and this seat is up for grabs because one of the Republican that now has it is retiring. Republicans are hoping to hang on to this seat, but we know that Democrats are hoping to flip it. So this is one where you have for the Democrats John Fetterman running, and he was really, he's been involved in local politics and state politics for some time. He was up ahead in this for race for quite some time. And then for the Republicans, you had Dr. Mehmet Oz, and he, of course, is a surgeon and a talk show host that people are familiar with. And so for some time, Fetterman was really up ahead, but after he suffered a stroke, this became a much closer race as we got closer to today, Election Day. Take a listen to what the two of them had to say about each other in the last day.
I'm going to miss some words. Sometimes I'm going to mush two words together. But one thing I absolutely will always get right is making sure that we stand for the important things in Washington, D.C.
I will bring balance to Washington, but John Fetterman, he'll bring more extreme. And there is no greater example of two people that different running for the Senate.
Another race we'll be watching is the one in Nevada for the Senate seat there, where Senator Catherine Cortez Masto is considered to be vulnerable right now. She was elected in 2016. She was the first Latina elected to the Senate. And up against her fighting this is Republican challenger Adam Laxalt. He's a former attorney general there, and so that one is a close race to watch. Another one, of course, is Georgia, and there you have for the Democrats, Senator Raphael Warnock trying to hang on to his seat. He's up against Republican challenger Herschel Walker, and the two of them were taking their final shots at each other last night.
Cannot trust Herschel Walker to tell the truth about the basic facts of his life.
If he was doing a good job, he wouldn't have voted with Joe Biden 96% of the time.
And of course, although today, as you said, is Election Day, there were millions of ballots already issued in early votes, 40 million ballots. We, of course, have to wait to see what people have decided in this election. That could be some time, Heather.
So in that building behind you, in one of the chambers, of course, the House, the Speaker of the House of Representatives is Nancy Pelosi currently. And she is talking now for the first time about the night her husband was attacked in their home in California. What did she say in that interview, Magda, in terms of that incident, her own personal future, and how it portends or the outcome of these elections?
Well, as you know, police have said that attack was politically motivated and that the accused admitted that Nancy Pelosi was his intended target. So during this interview, you could see her getting emotional at times and holding back tears and saying that, you know, her husband had to pay the price for this misinformation. She also talked about the state of the country. She talked about concerns about the safety of election workers, political figures, and people voting today. And she talked about how democracy is really at stake.
You know, of course, I'm sad because of my husband, but I'm also sad because for our country, unless we can get over this and have enough people out there say, while I may not agree with everything the Democrats are for or the Republicans are for, I do agree that our democracy is important and that we must protect it.
Now, there are predictions that the House Republicans are going to take the House in these elections, and Pelosi was asked if that happened, would she consider retiring? She didn't answer that question directly, but did say she's thinking about the events of the last couple of weeks. Heather?
Magda, thank you very much. As we begin there on the steps of the Capitol building in Washington, and Magda Gabriselassie. Now, the midterm votes seen as something of a test for not just Joe Biden, but for Donald Trump as well, and his political future. Hundreds of Republican candidates up and down the ballot are election deniers, parroting Trump's false claim that the 2020 election was stolen by Democrats. The former president is signaling he will make another run for the White House, and at a campaign rally last night in the key state of Ohio, Trump teased that he'll make an announcement next week. In the last hour of our program, Ravi Perry was with us. He's a political science professor at Howard University in Washington, and we talked about Trump's hold on Republicans today and potentially going forward.
He's a major figure. He is the de facto leader of the Republican Party. And there in my home state of Ohio, which is the pivotal state, always has been in presidential politics, it's not surprising that he would tease whether or not he's going to run for office again. But we have seen that convicted, potentially indicted candidates for presidencies and prime ministers around the world don't necessarily not win election. I mean, we've seen that in certain places like Israel and Brazil and other countries. And so the fact that he might be in legal trouble, given much of what some folks have argued he was responsible for related to January 6th, may not be enough to keep voters from not supporting their party interests. But let's be clear, what happens today is likely going to happen because of what already we know because of the census and political racial gerrymandering. Why can we predict the House of Representatives is going to go red, going to go Republican, is because the districts have already been drawn in Republicans' advantage because they control most of the state legislatures that drew the lines based on redistricting because of the census in 2020. And so that pretty much is a lost game. But the U.S. Senate is still up in the air. And what voters do in state and local races, particularly secretaries of state and governor races, will control whether or not we will have the democracy as we know it. And one key example is important here. We already have had more lawsuits in the United States for this election that is happening as of 5 minutes ago than we did in 2020. And we have the Justice Department, which since 1965 and the passage of the Voting Rights in this country, Voting Rights Act, has been required to go into certain states that have had a history of discrimination. And Democrat of course, leaders have supported that, but the Justice Department have already indicated they are going into several key battleground states. And here's something that's happened that's never happened before, at least in my lifetime. The Missouri state officials have indicated that they're not going to allow federal officials in to observe elections in their state. This harkens back to the pre-civil rights era, where state rights were trying to say that federal rights had no power over them. And that's just simply not how our Constitution works. So democracy in the United States today will be up to the voters.